What's going on, Digital Wildcatters? Welcome to another week of Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. Got a great episode for you today. Got Jared and Angie, the founders of Flowstate, down here from Wyoming, Casper, Wyoming. Are both of y'all in Casper?
Yeah,
Yep.
Casper.
Okay.
The Oil City, it's known as.
Yeah. So I let them know that I spent some time up in Wyoming, and the greatest
Casper's
part.
growing, right? Like there's a lot of people moving out to Wyoming, right?
Yeah, it does seem, at least if you look at the housing market and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
it feels like
Yeah.
all of Colorado is moving to Casper.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like everybody get out of our state.
So real quick, tell us what Flowstate is. That way we have some context to what y'all do as a company, and then we're going to dive into it. Whichever one of
Sounds
you wants to
great. Go
take
for it.
off.
So Flowstate is a pipeline leak detection company. So we build software. So we're a software-based leak detection company that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to predict or just discover when there's a leak in a pipeline. And get those alerts and those alarms to pipeline operators, be them upstream, midstream, downstream operators, that anybody running a pipe, so they can get to that as quick as they can, be alerted as quick as they can, start mitigating those potential
All right.
environmental
It's
issues.
that easy. Machine learning for pipeline leak detection. I'm sure there's not a lot involved with that.
Right.
No, I think this is actually one of the most interesting nexus when it comes to technology, whether it's methane leak detection or pipeline leak detection, because not only do you solve problems in environmental and sustainability, but oftentimes you're solving problems from an economic perspective as well. Because if you're an oil and gas company and you're losing oil out of a pipeline, or you're losing, methane from leaks, you're losing product, right? So you're solving multiple problems at one time. Before we really start talking about the technology, both of y'all have interesting backgrounds. So I want to get into founder stories real quick before we really talk about the nuts and bolts of the technology. I want to hear about y'all's backgrounds and then how you built this solution for Flowstate. So whichever one of y'all wants to start with the genesis story of how y'all got here.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. And there's some overlaps in the story. For
Yeah.
Sure. So we'll hit those as well. So Angie and I are both from Wyoming, and we met at the University of Wyoming longer ago than I like to admit these days, but not that long ago. Back in the '90s, and then I started my career as a software developer in Austin, actually. So I lived in Austin during .com boom and,
Okay.
and bust, right? So,
Yeah.
so I went through all of that in the early 2000s. Came back and had a little stint in defense contracting, which actually Angie got me into that job too. So I'll let her talk about that background.
Okay, yeah, because
Hers is a lot more
I just
interesting.
did like real quick 2-second look up on LinkedIn, and I saw Boeing and was it
Raytheon.
Raytheon.
Yeah, Raytheon. So we got to dive into that a little bit too. I'm
Yeah,
sure that was
yeah.
interesting.
You can say that for Angie's story. Hers is a lot better than mine. And then kind of found my way back to Wyoming, had a previous engineering software startup called Firehole Technologies. So we were named after the Firehole River that goes through Yellowstone Park.
Okay.
And we made engineering software. So like design software specific for material, people building things with carbon. So
Mhm.
like Boeing was our biggest customer.
Okay.
So they were building like the 787 at the time.
Yeah.
So they were building the wings and the fuselage out of carbon fiber. So we built software to help them design that. And I actually, one of our other intersects after college is Angie came on board and worked with us at that company as well.
Okay.
And then we sold that company in 2013 to Autodesk.
Okay.
You've probably heard of, they make
Yeah.
AutoCAD.
Yeah.
Right. So we weren't really
It's
in the
like
AutoCAD side
I
of the
think they're like
business.
low key, like one of the 10 largest businesses in the world.
They're,
Right?
Yeah.
they're really, they're really big.
Yeah.
Fortune. I don't know what they are now, in the hundreds probably.
Yeah.
Based in San Francisco.
Mhm.
The division that bought us was in Portland. So that was pretty interesting for a bunch of cowboys from Wyoming. They're like, okay, now you guys are Silicon Valley people. Enjoy your trips to San Francisco and stuff like that. So I stayed there for 3 years and worked for them. It was actually a really fun time. Traveled the world. Like there was one year I was not in my house 200 days. And it was everything from Asia to Europe to everything in between. Traveling for them, started to kind of get this reputation that I could go give a keynote speech for the company. So I kind of I did the crappy ones. Like I didn't do one in Vegas. I did the one in Poland.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was really fun. So spent 3 years there. Left Autodesk, kind of did some startup-y things. So I got really, really engaged in like the startup community of Wyoming. Like that's kind of my passion. It kind of still is.
Yeah.
So started an angel investment fund and worked at an incubator, ran an accelerator for a while. And then we'll get into this, I guess, in a couple minutes. But then one of my kind of acquaintances from high school back that has a pipeline came to me and decided, we think there's some technology here that we're working on that has now become Flowstate. So
awesome. Yeah, we'll dive into
that's a pretty
that
good story
bit.
too.
Yeah.
But we'll
Angie, sounds like I love that you guys have storied history. You've worked on products together. Tell us your background, and
Sure.
we'll bring both sides
It's a
together.
little similar. We're both mechanical engineers by degree and kind of knew each other in college through that. A lot of study sessions together and stuff like that. After school, I went to work for Raytheon in Tucson. They were just hiring like crazy. They hired 2,300 new grads the year that I came in.
Wow.
So that was a fun time. A lot of young engineers all starting their careers together in Tucson. And my husband and I went out there at the same time, and we were there for about 10 years. And then we loved Tucson, but we missed Wyoming. We're, Wyoming born and bred. Wanted to find a way to get back there. Never thought we'd be able to find jobs in Wyoming, but just somehow the timing worked out. He actually went straight into oil gas. He works manufacturing for refineries. For me, it was a little bit trickier, but then Jared gave me the invite to join that first startup that we worked together on. When we got acquired by Autodesk, I rode that through. It was great. At the time, I had young children. I was able to work remote from home before that was even a thing.
Yeah.
So I was working part-time for this, Fortune 500 company, but also going to have lunch with my kids. And it was great. And I probably would have done that for a long time because it was super fun. The team I was on at the time, it was like 8 of us and none of us were co-located. We were all over the place. Like I said before, that was even, the norm. So I was having fun actually doing that. And then Jared let me know about this opportunity, and I wasn't like super excited to get back into full-time work. And not only that, but like be the boss. So like you have to be at work. But it was really exciting, the opportunity to get in. I've never worked in oil and gas, so that was going to be completely new. The machine learning aspect was interesting. I've never done that, so that was going to be entirely new. The most exciting thing to me was actually building the company. So the chance to build a company in Casper, try to give, some young talent there the opportunity to do something really exciting and something in an industry that's near and dear to the folks in Wyoming. So that was probably the most intriguing part to me.
Very cool. So Jared goes and recruits you, gets you on board. Your friend owns a pipeline. He's the one that brings the problem, thinks that y'all have the skill set to solve this. What year was that? Can you give some context?
2019.
So 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the technology goes a little bit before that, and the story is kind of, I guess, relevant. It's a good time to tell it. So the True Companies, it's a big privately owned conglomerate. I think they have like 1,000 employees over like 9 states. But Tad True, who is a couple years older than me, grew up
This
in
is the
Casper
same
as
True
well.
Oil.
True Oil, yeah.
There's 2 True Oils actually.
Is
A lot
there?
of you can get them confused, but there's a bigger True Oil, which is this one, and then there is a smaller True
Oh, I didn't know
Oil.
there was a small one, but yeah. Is that true?
I think I've run across that before as well. Yeah.
All right. So big
Big True.
True
Big
Oil.
True,
All
yeah.
right.
So the Tad is the 3rd generation of True. True is their last name, and he runs the pipelines for the organization. They have a whole, like, everything but downstream. They've got a lot of production, drilling, a bunch of ranches, and the pipeline. And he runs the pipeline, and they actually had a couple leaks. They had one in 2015 and one in 2016. And the story he tells, and he might be a little bit exaggerating it, but he basically got hailed to the governor of North Dakota's office, like, you shall be here tomorrow. And he shows up, and around the boardroom is all of the other big pipeline operators in North Dakota, and they got a dressing down.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know anything about Doug Burgum. He's still the governor of North Dakota. He's a techie, so I kind of follow him.
Yeah.
He was the founder of Great Plains Software in Fargo,
Okay.
and then they got acquired by Microsoft years ago. And
Okay.
he moved to Seattle, and he was in the C-suite at Microsoft forever. And then he moved back and ran for governor. Now he's the governor of North Dakota.
Actually didn't know that. That's really
It's
interesting.
a cool story. And I mean, he basically looked these guys in the eyes and, you guys got 2 choices. You guys innovate or I regulate.
Yeah.
And I don't want to regulate.
Yeah.
So go off and do that. And Tad came back and worked with some of his IT folks and wound up trying to figure out, let's go find some technology for leak detection. Went off and did a huge search. Let's go buy something. Let's go, build something. Couldn't find anything. So they got hooked up with the IBM Watson group. IBM's Watson machine learning group, built a proof of concept. let's go build something that actually can work for our pipelines. And that's when kind of turned into Flowstate.
Cool.
How I got introduced to it is a very Wyoming story. I was literally at the governor's mansion in Wyoming, which is like, that sounds really cool in Texas, right? But it's not. It's kind of a thing in Wyoming. It's not a very big state. And I mean, Tad and I were by no means friends, but we were acquaintances. And I knew of all the stuff they did. And they had a bunch of oil stuff in my head, and they had a bunch of ranches. And he kind of corners me. He's like, Jared, I want to talk to you about AI. And I knew he had a bunch of ranches. And I was like, Dad, when I say AI, does that mean the same thing as you when you say AI? Because I don't know anything about artificial inseminated cows.
Yeah.
He's like, no, artificial intelligence, you're going to love this. So we came back home the next couple of days, and he kind of pitched me on the prototype they had worked with IBM. And he's like, I think this needs to be a business.
Yeah.
I eventually kind of ran to, do you want to go take it as a business?
Yeah.
I'll invest in it. And
Yeah.
you guys spin it out and take the technology and do it. I was like, that sounds great. I got a couple conditions, and one of them is that I could go get Angie. So.
Yeah.
I'm curious a little bit. Do you have any more details on just so that we understand more of the value proposition, that kind of exploratory phase of going out to the market and saying like, hey, we're looking to buy something, we're looking to use something. We didn't find anything that really met what we were looking for. Now that's the genesis of boom.
Yeah.
This being developed.
Yeah. So we still run to this like every day. Like
Mhm.
when we're pitching a new customer now, that's like we would try to tell our story.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the beginning of the story is they tried to find something, right?
Mm-hmm.
No big oil company wants to go invent an artificial intelligence technology, right? Although it's cool, they'd rather just go buy the product and solve their problem, right? And then next. And it's for a couple of mechanical engineers, the first time you hear it, you're like, it's flow through a pipe. Like I kind of did that sophomore year. Like how hard can this be, right? But it's actually a really, really hard problem because it gets even more complicated when you get up into the Rockies because you're going up and over mountains, and sometimes these, especially like down in the Permian is a good example where you're drilling a new well every day, so there's new injections coming in all over the place. So you see flow rates going up and down and all the things. And sometimes when the flow rate drops, it kind of looks like a leak, and it's a hard problem. So there's a handful of technologies that are kind of traditional ones that like build like little 1D hydraulic models and try to match your little 1D hydraulic model to the actual pressures that you're and flow rates that you're pulling off the pipes. And it does a pretty good job on some pretty normal pipelines. The Trues have a whole interesting kind of smattering of different pipes. So they've got gathering systems up in the Bakken. They've got gathering systems up in the Powder River. And they got big transmission lines that go in between. And they needed something that kind of worked on the little systems and the big systems and everything. So they looked everything from computer-based systems, drones, fixed wing stuff that will have like sensors on them. And there's some cool guys doing some cool stuff on that. And they work in occasion, sometimes they don't work when there's 4 feet of snow in North Dakota. Sometimes you can't fly your drone when it's 40 below. So there's some issues there. There's people doing satellite stuff, but it flies over once a day at best, right? So there just wasn't anything that really could like tell me when there's a leak, tell me fast, and don't make it so it's really, really fixed that when I'm building these big gathering systems, it doesn't really expand.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I
Yeah,
hope?
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about how the technology works. You alluded to there's a lot of people in the space now that are going about it different. You have pipeline detection, which is drone and different sensors, and that's very much reactive. Sounds like y'all are a proactive solution, trying to use machine learning to predict and stop things or stop leaks before they happen. Is that a correct assessment?
Well, I wish.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to like when they happen.
When they happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So but part of the problem with like the drones and is it you just like you have to be lucky to be flying over it, right? So
Yeah.
it could be days and stuff like that.
Okay.
We measure ours in minutes.
Okay. So let's talk about predictive because there have been technologies on the show that have been working towards that.
Yep.
And I'm always really interested, especially when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence, because there's so much bullshit out there across all industries. Like most startups will talk about how they have artificial intelligence when it's really just a group of software engineers or data scientists sitting around a table. And they have a lot of just manual processes that's not really true machine learning. And so always like to kind of peel back and say, hey, what's actually possible and what can be done with machine learning. And I think that especially this industry is starting to get a little bit numb to the idea of artificial intelligence, just because there has been a lot of
Crap.
promises and
Yeah.
crap out there, and you get sold on something and then it's like, oh, you can't actually do it. And so, I appreciate that you guys are like, no, we wish that we were there
Yeah.
to where we can predict leaks, but right now we're just trying to identify them really quick.
Yeah, machine learning is such a broad term and you can use it for anything under the sun right now. And it's definitely a buzzword that people feel like they need to throw it out. We've been at conferences where it's like literally injected into everybody's topic of their presentation. And you do kind of call bullshit on it.
Yeah.
And when people think about it, especially those who maybe haven't spent a lot of time looking at its actual applications, you think, oh, it's some computer beep, boop, beep, boop, telling me when a leak is going to happen. But we are really using it in a very targeted application. So as Jared mentioned, one of the legacy solutions that's been out there for decades has been using engineering equations, basically bring in all the data you can, use proven physical equations to try to, and when we say predict the flow, what they're doing is using all that input data to say, this is what we think should be coming out of the line. And then you compare that to what's actually coming out of the line.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a mismatch, then you indicate looks like a leak.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that engineering is very, very difficult. It takes a long time to nail, to set up the model. Sometimes a room full of engineers to do that, to get it just right. It requires very precise data. Like there's 8 different ways that can go wrong or start to fall down. Plus it just takes a long time.
Yeah.
So you're talking time, head count, all that. It's very costly. And so that was the problem that the Trues were hoping to solve. And when they decided, hey, let's throw machine learning at that problem. We get all this data. Maybe the computer can do a better job of that engineering, that specific application. And so that's really what we're doing. The machine learning does a very good job of learning the operations of the pipeline so that it can kind of jump ahead of that line and skip all of that engineering and learn the process, learn the operations of the pipeline. So when we say it's predicting what it thinks the output of the pipeline should be, and then is comparing that to the measured, and then just looking for an imbalance there. So it's actually not as sexy as it sounds, except for the efficiency that it brings to the table.
Efficiency is sexy, right? Because what you explain there is like, hey, look, this is how you'd go about it. You have a room full of engineers, and just the modeling and the data is going to take so much time to engineer and calculate to even see that anomaly or that discrepancy. We can use machine learning to train this model, and it can quickly identify when there's a discrepancy between expected output and actual. And then you can go at that point, look into it and address the situation. So,
and then there's not a lot of arm waving of here's what we think it can do. We can show them that it works and how much time it saves. And then that's when you do start seeing eyebrows raised like, oh, really?
Yeah.
That actually sounds real.
Yeah. When you look at machine learning across different verticals, I think, there's been some within oil and gas, there have been some really cool applications with machine learning where it really assists engineers and helps them do their job faster. Yeah. And I think that those are always the practical and pragmatic solutions. And obviously, we have a lot of moonshot ideas in the world. Fully self-driving is a very hot topic right now, and it's a cool topic. And those are cool, but there's so much low-hanging fruit in industries where you can help engineers and companies do their job faster, more efficient, with just some of these process efficiency gains.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's so let's talk about 2019 is kind of when y'all formed this. Then you go into 2020. Obviously COVID and everything that happened there. What's it been like taking the product to market? What's nice about this is that it was developed by an oil company that had a problem, right? So those are always the best solutions when the end user is saying, hey, there's a problem, we need to develop something. How has it been taking it to the rest of the market?
Yeah, so we've really, like this year was kind of that's the Flowstate theme of 2022, is we're going to market now. So we're 6 months into that taking market. And you kind of nailed it, that that's really what really piques people's interest. Is we're not like a couple grad students with this cool kind of little tweaky light bulb that we're trying to figure out the right problem to go solve. Like it's the reverse. Like we know this is a problem. Yeah. We've solved it for a big customer. We have them as still a really good partner.
Yeah.
The True Companies, and Bridger Pipeline is the name of their pipeline organization. They've been amazing to us. So like they're a great reference customer for us. They have this really cool kind of fancy control room that you can bring people in and be like, see, here's the big screen with Flowstate on it. And they've allowed us to test this thing to the nines, which is really cool. So we've taken literally take a truck out into the middle of nowhere pipeline, tap in, pump out oil into a frac tank, fake a leak. We've done that like 200 times.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was gonna ask also. I know y'all are a software solution, so is it agnostic to different types of sensors or systems, or are there any hardware components to it as well?
Yeah, the instrumentation is one of the things that like machine learning really lends itself to. So the short answer to your question is yes. So one of our value props is we don't go sell you new hardware. We don't go sell you new sensors. Whatever you got, we're going to give you as good of leak detection as we can, given the instrumentation that you have on your pipeline. And that's one of the things that machine learning is really good at. For example, we just did this gathering system up in North Dakota, and it has like 9 different inputs. So there's 9 different meters coming into a pipe. Then it goes like 20 miles down the road, and there's one output meter. And those are all attached to different LAC units, which are like the meters at the wellhead. They're all attached to different ones, and they could be on or off at any time because they're run on tank levels, and they kind of come in and out. So how's that? So there's 8 coming in and 1 coming out, so 9 total. So at any one time, any of those could be on. So there's 256 different combinations of which meters could be on or off, and no meters are perfect, so they all have a little teeny bit of offsets, right?
Yeah.
So if you were trying to like engineering calculate this, you need to calculate the offset of when these 2 are on to when this one's on, and when these 3 are on, when these are on. So there's 256 different combinations of different offsets you need to calculate. Machine learning just learns that. It just like you give it the data, and they're like, got it, right?
Yeah.
A couple hours later.
Yeah.
So that's a really good example of how you can use existing instrumentation and still get really good leak detection, because the computers are just amazing at being able to learn those kind of combinations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a long answer to your question, but yeah, we're pretty much sensor.
I like long answers to my questions. I always tell people it's when you get engineers in here that don't give you long answers, you like pry information out of them.
A little short.
Then that's when we make a trip over here.
Yeah, when you're a podcast host, you want long answers. So.
Yes, we build software.
Yeah, exactly. I've had some of those. I'm like, come on, give me some more information here. Angie, so earlier you made a comment about, you never worked in oil and gas, and, this opportunity was exciting to you because of the idea of actually building a company and the operations behind it. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm always interested in talking about building businesses, and I'd like to nerd out on business models and building teams. What does a team look like for y'all right now? Do y'all have any employees, or is everyone up in Wyoming? Like, let's start talking about some of the inner workings of Flowstate.
Yeah, so we're at like 21 people, and it's a real interesting story actually, because of multiple factors. As I mentioned, one of our goals was to build the company in Wyoming, and Wyoming's not necessarily a hotbed for tech talent. So that was interesting. And literally 6 months into building the company, there was a global pandemic. So we've just had some strange curveballs thrown at us, but it's been an interesting story. So we actually started software development. We decided to go with a third-party contractor, because they had it, and it was internal to Wyoming, so it kind of still met that goal of keeping it local and stuff. So they were a great way for us to start, so we didn't have to spend a lot of our time and energy trying to recruit software developers. In the meantime, we just started picking up some talent along the way, and there's been some interesting stories. One of our developers, was just excited about the problem. He actually left another Wyoming company just because he was so excited about our solution and was excited that we were building a company in Casper. A chunk of our staff are actually former petroleum engineers or people that were working in the field and either got laid off or kind of saw the writing on the wall, or just decided it was time for a career change. Some of them were real in the field, on the road all the time, away from family. So they liked the industry, but this was an exciting opportunity for them to do something else. So for some of them, they just brought the skills, like project management skills that they already had, and we just took that. Some of them had actually left and gone to like a coding boot camp or something and picked up some software development skills. So we have a really interesting mishmash.
So let me stop you there, because that part of the conversation excites me because Jake and I are the same way here down in Houston. We're really passionate about the tech ecosystem here in Houston. You have one of the most technical workforces in the world here in Houston, but it's not really known as a software tech hub,
Sure.
right? And so, but you have a ton of petroleum engineers, geophysicists, people like that are upskilling and they're going to
hmm
boot camps. It's funny. John Calfane's working with us and he's building out we're doing some really cool things with all the data that we have at Digital Wildcatters. He was a fucking frack engineer
Yeah.
he knows how to run Python. And if you can deal with frack data, you can definitely help us with the data that
Our stuff is
we're
child's
trying-
play.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And so, but you take what I'm getting at is you have really smart people in the industry and you take their project management skills, you take their technical understanding of
Communication.
communication,
Knowing how to talk to the
things.
guys in the control
Yes,
room, like
yeah.
having that, not that introverted, I just like to pound out code. So it's been a great mixture of skill sets for us.
Yeah, and then also bringing. You mentioned that you had someone that was excited about the challenge and the solution that y'all are building, and that's another thing. Attracting tech talent. I had a software engineer from Netflix reach out to me a
Really?
couple weeks ago asking which oil and gas tech companies that they should look at.
Do you have his resume? No.
Yeah, I do. I do.
We can't afford him, but
That's what I told him. I said, I was like, I would hire you, but I can't afford Netflix salaries. So,
But he's tired of building recommending
and his thing
engines,
was,
huh?
he's like, I'm looking at what's happening. You're obviously seeing market cycles. He's like, I think tech's going to be down, oil and gas and energy is going to be up. He's like, I'm looking to see what opportunities. He's like, plus it just seems like y'all have really interesting challenges to solve. And once people get exposed to the challenges, they get excited because you see this especially with Gen Z, millennials to some extent, but specifically Gen Z. It's not all about money and compensation. They want to actually be challenged and work on products that have an impact. And so that, I love the dynamic of attracting tech talent to oil and gas, but then also using oil and gas talent and these engineers and field personnel and leveraging the skills that they have. So,
And it's some really fun problems. It really is. And they're well adapted to some of these really cool new technologies, especially pipelines specifically, which is where, we spend all of our time. Whenever you talk to like someone about, hey, I want to do this machine learning problem or whatever, they're like, well, you can, but you need to have a ton of data to be able to do that. Right. And so like Google is really good at identifying images because they've got 1 million images of cats and 1 million images of dogs. And they're like, well, okay, we know what they are. And we can.
And then training models through captures.
Yeah. So they have tons of data. Or if, it's one of the examples I use of kind of the way we use machine learning is we call it regression, but it's kind of trying to predict the future. And Google is really good at that because like when you type in your, half of your search, you're like, how the heck did you know that's that? And they're really, really good at kind of predicting the future because they have 1 billion people all going at the same time. Well, pipelines are the same way. And it's not really because they meant to, but they just need to know what the flow rates are and they need to know what the pressures are. And they've needed this for 40 years to be able to operate the pipelines, but they've been really good at, so now they just have all this data. So they're just big data machines. They're really, Internet of Things before the Internet of Things was a thing, right? But when you get to talk to someone who really understands machine learning, they get really excited about it. They're like, oh, I have tons of data to work with, because usually they're trying to build these crazy machine learning models in a data-starved environment. And it's the opposite. We have way too much data.
So you are actually using historical data to actually train these models
Yep.
and then doing the tests on top of that. So it's not just moving forward.
Yeah. Ideally, that's what we do. Sometimes people don't have historical data, like when they're building a brand new pipeline, right?
Is there an instance where you have like a lot of historical data that's absolutely like, what would make that useless for training a model? Is there any scenarios like that?
There are some situations, especially if the pipeline changes a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're putting in new injections or you put in a new meter and new pumps and stuff like that, then it's kind of different.
Yeah.
It's kind of different.
Yeah.
But usually, I mean, if it's a pipeline that hasn't changed in a long time, that historical data is great.
Yeah.
Like the Trues they keep their data for 10 years and it's been really,
Nice.
really
Oh, yeah.
educational for us.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously like data formatting issues and, stuff that the IT guys have to deal with, but so maybe we can jump through all those hoops. Yeah.
It's funny talking about attracting younger talent or tech talent. Chuck recorded this podcast a few weeks back with this, I think he was a younger college kid, and was telling a story that they did this workshop at their university, and the workshop was titled, this isn't verbatim, but you'll get the gist. And it was mapping subsurface oil and gas minerals. And he said like 5 people showed up and then did the same exact workshop a few months later, but renamed it leveraging artificial intelligence to map subsurface oil and gas, had like 200 kids
No
showed
way.
up. Yeah.
Interesting
And so-
A/B test
yeah,
there.
yeah. And so, really educating people on the challenges that these old industries face, and then leveraging new technology to solve those challenges is a big part of being able to attract those types of people. And it's just kind of like that team member that you alluded to, that they get excited once they see the challenges, because these are real challenges, not creating some new notification plugin on a
Right.
consumer app, right? So
Right.
yeah.
They're real challenges, but they're achievable, which I think is fun too, right?
Yeah.
So like you could go work for one of those autonomous car companies, right? And they're eventually going to figure that problem
Oh
out,
yeah, we'll
right?
get there. Yeah.
But it's like, we're achieving things like every couple of months. We're like, yep, new pipeline, new model, new stuff. Like it's
Well, yeah,
and delivering it to an end customer who's all excited.
I mean,
about it.
I've
So-
written about the most impactful technology will come in the oil and gas space over the next decade. And I believe that. I had someone sitting here talking about their technology the other day. You guys would probably appreciate this, working at Boeing and Raytheon, but he's a scientist, and he's using lasers to continuously monitor methane over 13,000 continuous acres. I mean, this is
Cool.
huge. And he's out of Stanford. All of his background was in laser technology, and got a grant from DOE. And how is that not cool as shit, first
Oh,
off?
yeah.
And then it's impactful as well today. I mean, it's working today, and it has an impact that both help oil and gas companies from an economic perspective, and also from a sustainability perspective as well. So kind of to your point, these are things that every couple of months you're making progress, instead of, fully self-driving, which I'm on the same page as you. We're going to solve that, but longer time
Yeah.
horizon.
I'm glad smart people are working on that problem, because
Yeah.
being in the middle of Wyoming, it'd be great to have to take me to Denver. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you guys really struggled with kind of getting over that hump of attracting the right kind of tech talent to energy?
Yeah, what's that look like in Casp? Like, kind of give us some context of what it looks like in Casper in terms of tech talent, because like you said, not known as a tech hub, just like Houston's not either.
Because oil
Can you
and
give
gas is
some-
prevalent there, right? So a lot of people should be
Yep.
somewhat conditioned to it. But you see it even here in Houston. There's people who lived here their entire life and just haven't been exposed to oil and gas. I was one of those. I lived in College Station growing up for 20 years and was never exposed to oil and gas my entire life. So I'm kind of curious, how hard has it been to attract that kind of talent?
Yeah. So I don't think very rarely have we run into the like, oh, I'm not that interested in running in
Yeah.
working in oil and gas. It's part of the DNA of Wyoming and of
Yeah.
Casper for sure. So like I'm a part owner in a brewery in Casper. Even we kind of follow the oil and gas market, right? Because that's kind of that's what's pushing the economy, right? So I don't think we've had that problem. I mean, there's definitely there's talent, and actually maybe COVID's gotten it a little better, which is kind of crazy, because people, everyone went remote, and being in the middle of Wyoming sounds pretty great for people. So there's not a ton of talent, but there's enough that we've been able to get, especially on younger talent, right? So getting people right out of one of these coding boot camps, or right out of school or something like that.
Let's talk about that.
We've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
Experience is there's not a bunch of it. So
Yeah.
that's been hard.
So how is that? How is navigating? There's not a lot of guys that have tons and tons of experience. How are some of these coding boot camps, and are they really like? I've been a little skeptical, because I'm just not sure whether that's enough time to really kind of get up to scale, to really go into the market and make an impact without somebody having to come in and hold your hand. There used to be, literally next door, there was a coding boot camp over there, and there were some of the E&Ps in town that were just hiring everybody that graduated out of there. And so I was really curious whether they were actually going to be effective within this organization, and could they upskill them very quickly, or if they were just going in there and falling flat.
It depends. I mean, there's we need a full stack of development. And so there's this portion of what we're doing that they work great for that. And we're able to throw a lot of stuff at them, and they're able to get it done pretty quickly. And that's just fine. But there's definitely another layer of software development that's not going to help us with. And so we're needing somebody that's got a little bit more software development education and experience. And that's been tricky. And I actually think COVID's made that a little more difficult, because now those guys can get a job anywhere they can work for anyone and get paid whatever they want.
Which
almost.
that's also changing currently too, just on a macro perspective.
Hoping so. Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
it's
there's
definitely been an interesting wave.
Yeah. I mean,
there's definitely
not to
growing
get too
month over month.
not to get too in the weeds into this, but I mean, when the Fed injects trillions of dollars into the market, I mean, you saw these companies' valuations just rise up, and everyone's compensation went along with that, both on a cash basis and on a stock option basis. And now that, I mean, you see Shopify drawing down 90%. I mean, all of these big tech companies.
And on their valuation or headcount?
Market cap. Valuation.
90%.
Yeah. I mean, that's Airbnb, Spotify, that's all your big tech companies. And with that, employee compensation goes down, and then layoffs are happening. I mean, you're seeing these companies lay off 10 to 25% of employees. So the market is definitely shifting and cooling off a little bit. But trying to hire tech talent over the last 2 years has been an absolute nightmare because, one, you can't afford them when you're a startup. And, I don't know if I think you said the Trues backed Flowstate, but I mean, like we talked about with that Netflix engineer, I mean, these are people that make $400,000 salaries, right? And when they work remote, they demand that same pay. And so that becomes, I mean, talk about Combo Curve, our friends at Combo Curve talked about that problem with them for the last years. Like, we cannot find the amount of developers that we need to scale our product. And it's just a huge pain point.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that craziness is going to start to settle down, and we're hoping to find some people that see that reality. And, we're pretty old school in terms of like trying not to overpay people until we know that it's going to be a viable business. We can pay the bills and stuff. So we're trying not to let things get out of hand so that
I love how you deemed it old school. No, it's pragmatic and practical.
We just want to be able to pay our bills.
Customers and revenue and stuff. I know, super old school. I know that's weird.
We're not going to have a Flowstate yacht.
Businesses like Flowstate and digital wildcatters are very in vogue now. It's like, oh, you actually give a shit about bottom line and controlling burn.
Can we, is this check going to be good? So we're looking forward to writing through that. But where we've been super lucky is our data science team. Actually, we've got some rock stars that are right in Casper, and it's kind of been a crazy story how we've accumulated those too. A couple of them actually were working R&D for a large operator in the industry who decided to downsize their data science team, and so we picked them up. And then we had another guy who was driving train. Like, you joke about when people think engineers are people who drive trains, like he literally was driving train for Burlington Northern Santa Fe and decided, I kind of don't like this job anymore. So he was doing night school for Johns Hopkins right there in Casper.
What?
Like, literally, when we got his resume, Jared and I were like, this can't be real. Like, because you get crazy resumes when you post a job.
How hard can it be to drive a train? I mean, imagine just like go, like
he
just
might
go
have
and
literally
stop.
been
You really
doing
don't
his
have a
studies
steering
while
wheel.
he was on the
You
train.
go being from train conductor to studying at Johns Hopkins. That's
in data science.
And he's amazing. Yeah. He's super smart. So it's been kind of fun just picking up amazing talent out of random places too.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. I love that. Being resourceful and where you find people is, I mean, it's an edge.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I think, before we started the podcast, but I mean, Casper's growing, right? And I'm pretty bullish on it because it's kind of got some, it's big enough that, there's an art museum and a Home Depot, right?
Yeah.
like there's that, but it's not huge. Our public schools are amazing.
Yeah.
So people that you get them at the right age, right? They're sitting in the middle of Phoenix right now, and they have a kindergartner. It was really fun when I was in my 20s, and now I'm looking at private school and commutes and all that kind of stuff. So, and there's a place for them now.
Yeah.
So there's some benefit we're getting from just kind of our location.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though, our location is not because of that. Our location works really well for our customers too, right?
Yeah.
We've got, and the problem we're trying to solve means a lot to us because we got pipelines in our backyards.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of hits.
Yeah. Hits home.
All three.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's important. I mean, I've always said that the best energy tech companies, startups come from the industry. So a solution like this was obviously, came from the oil and gas industry. Hey, we got a problem. We need to solve this. I never believed that it's companies out of San Francisco that are going to solve oil and gas problems. It's people up in Casper that are by the pipelines that are.
And the truth is, they don't want to solve it. When I talk to my friends in San Francisco, they're not that interested in solving an oil and gas problem. you know, and hopefully that changes,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
but it means more to us.
yeah.
I think with this boom, it will change
Yeah.
naturally. The interest will follow.
Yeah.
Not saying it's going to completely like everybody at Stanford's going to be like, I'm going to oil and gas now.
I've
But
had a few podcasts over the last month that are all Stanford grads or
There's
people
more of them.
based
The
out of Silicon Valley.
future is
So.
energy and water. I think people will start realizing that. Yeah.
I think over the last 6 months, people are starting to understand just how important energy is to society. So that's part of our mission is raise energy IQ across the
Great.
world because it's very important, right? So, I think that what y'all are working on is great. I think that, like I said multiple times in the show, this is one of the most interesting intersections for me is this technology in oil and gas that makes a impact both economically and environmentally. So excited what y'all are working on. How do people find y'all if they're interested in reaching out to hear about Flowstate and see if it's a fit for their company?
Our website's probably the best.
All right.
Solution. Flowstatesolutions.ai.
Flowstatesolutions.ai. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Are y'all on LinkedIn? Can people find y'all
Of course,
on LinkedIn?
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, appreciate y'all taking the time to come on the show today. Super interesting stuff. Guys, if you want to check them out, we'll drop the link to the website in the show notes.
you're wanting to hit the table.
I want to hit
You're
the-
slowing down really.
We got lectured before
Yeah.
the podcast. Do not hit the table. And now he's hitting the
Yeah,
table.
I'm about to hit the table. I'm trying not to hit the table. Don't want to mess up our mics here. But again, appreciate y'all coming on the show. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
it's been nice talking with you. Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Absolutely.